thank you very much. So I have the honor to start with the first presentation. I'm looking forward to this very interesting workshop these days. Looking forward to a lot of interesting discussions here. So what I'm going to present today is mainly ongoing work that we're doing at the WSL in Birmenstorf, also within the Swiss National Forest Inventory. And it's mainly on our work on seeing how or assess the potential of close-range remote sensing technology to include them in the Swiss National Forest Inventory in an operational manner. So, but first of all, I want to give you a quick glance at the Swiss National Forest Inventory. So we're currently in the 5th iteration, which goes from 2018 to 2026. The first iteration started in the 1980s, and all over Switzerland we have around 6,500 forest plots regularly distributed, and on these plots multiple measurements as well as expert assessments is going on in order to assess the forest structure on these plots. So how do these plots look like? So in general we have a 50 by 50 square meter interpretation area, so this is the square area that you see in this figure on the right hand side. And within that, around the plot center, we have two concentric circles of 200 and 500 square meters where we do all the measurements on the trees, but only on certain trees of certain dimensions. On the entire interpretation area of 50 by 50 square meter, we mostly do expert assessments. So we assess the canopy layering, forest gaps, vegetation cover of certain strata, so shrub coverage, rejuvenation coverage, or ground coverage. So where do we see close-range remote sensing to come into this assessment of these plots? So we have seen that in the recent years, close-range remote sensing did quite a big development, and we're now able to assess the three-dimensional structure of forests in details that we haven't seen before. And this can give us quite a lot of benefits in terms of forest assessment in the framework of forest inventories. So for example, we are now able to increase the area of interest. So for example, I told you that we are measuring trees only on 200 and 500 square meter circles. So with close-range remote sensing, we might be able to increase this area, which can give us quite important information, for example, for the protective function of forests, especially in the mountainous areas. But the other thing is also, and one big important thing that we see is that we might be able to come from expert assessment, which is often a little bit observer biased, to a more kind of a measurement of these parameters. So that, for example, I'm thinking of canopy layering or to assess the miscellaneous coverages, such as the rejuvenation coverages, so that we come from a more kind of expert assessment to more measurements. But what is needed to make these close-range remote sensing techniques operational is, first of all, a robust data acquisition. So it needs to be robust, independent of seasons. So the field season in the Swiss NFI goes from March to October. So within that time frame, the data acquisition should be possible. Also, it should be possible on any terrain, any forest structure that we encounter, as well as it should be independent on the operator. So we should be able to give the instrument to any operator, and it should not, the acquired data should not differ between the operator that is using the instrument. And the second important thing is that data acquisition should be fast. So currently we have on average 2 hours per plot to acquire all the data, so this should not be significantly increased by adding new technology into the assessment. So how did we assess kind of the potential of close-range remote sensing techniques? So we did kind of a small benchmark where we tested out different terrestrial laser scanners, drone-based laser scanners, mobile laser scanners, as well as terrestrial photogrammetry by using very low-cost GoPro camera. And we tested them on 3 plots. Even though they're quite close together, they still have quite a gradient in terms of tree density, tree dimensions, and as well as understory vegetation cover. And we went there and tested all these instruments and looked at how well they performed. And here you can see kind of, first of all, on the right-hand side, small video of all the data sets that we acquired for one single plot. So here, first of all, the GoPro, and now the mobile laser scanner with the GeoSLAM ZebRevo. And you see on the left-hand side a table of acquisition time. And you can see that the times to acquire the data differs quite a lot. So with the mobile approaches on the ground, it's quite fast, between 10 to 20 minutes. However, with terrestrial laser scanners, we usually get up to several hours to acquire the data, especially if we use quite a lot of scan positions, such as for this plot here, it took us nearly 50 scan positions to get a full coverage. If you're interested in these point clouds, you can also go to the webpage pointclouds.wsl.ch. You will find all the acquired point clouds in this kind of pottery viewer where you can click through all the acquired point clouds. And of course, the point densities and point distribution differs quite a lot between these acquisitions. So with terrestrial laser scanning, we definitely have the biggest vertical coverage, whereas with the GoPro, we only have around point information in the low of 5 to 10 meters. With the ZebRevo mobile laser scanner, it goes a little bit up, but we miss out on the crown information. And with the Regal, it's completely the opposite around, so the Minivux, so where we lose out information in the lower part of the canopy. So how did the instruments perform? We did that mainly, this assessment mainly on tree detection and diameter breast height extraction. And here we found out that, yeah, terrestrial laser scanner is still basically the gold standard. However, other scanners, such as the mobile laser scanners, can come quite close to it, even though we have a higher noise level. And what also was quite important to see is that we do not invent any trees, so we do not want to have a lot of false positives here and here. The mobile laser scanner actually performed the best, so we had the least false positives here, so we had even more false positives with the terrestrial laser scanner. So this was quite nice to see. So the drone-based laser scanner had here, in terms of false positives, quite a lot of problems, but that was to be expected, was we had quite a lot of occlusion ongoing in the lower part of the canopy. Also, in terms of diameter breast height extraction, this mobile laser scanner performed quite well, even though we have a lot, quite a higher noise level than compared to the terrestrial laser scanners that we tested. So that was also nice to see that we still get quite decent performance in diameter breast height extraction. So what did we learn from this benchmark? So yeah, of course, still we see the terrestrial laser scanner still the gold standard to get the complete coverage, or nearly complete coverage of the entire canopy. However, mobile laser scanners showed quite some potential to, especially because the data acquisition is very, very fast. However, as you've seen before with this ZebRevo that we tested in this benchmark, we lose out a lot of information in the crown area. However, this became better with the newer version of the GeoSLAM handheld scanners. With the ZEP Horizon here, we can really now get full coverage nearly up to the uppermost part of the canopy, also when the leaves are already out. So this acquisition here was performed beginning of June of this year. But yeah, the problem with occlusion in the upper part of the canopy is also a problem that we still encounter with TLS, so it's not entirely only on the mobile laser scanner problem. So, but now we want to assess the robustness of these data acquisitions. So for that, we now started a bigger campaign covering the entire Switzerland, where we go up to 40 plots distributed in Switzerland to see how well these mobile laser scanners actually, so the GeoSLAM ZEP Horizon actually performs in these different plots. And you see in this video here the different plots that we encounter, so a lot very steep plots where it's really difficult to walk around, but also very dense understory where it's really like difficult to navigate through the plots. And what we also want to test is how robust are these measurements in terms of operators. So different operators have different trajectories through the plot, and want to assess how well or how the data does differ between the acquisitions. And you can see here on the left-hand side is the very easy plot that is seen in the video. Here we can basically follow quite closely to the targeted trajectory, but as soon as the plot gets very difficult, as for example a very dense understory or very steep terrain, the trajectories is quite hard to follow, and also the trajectories differ quite a lot between the operators, and it will be interesting to see how this affects the acquired point cloud. The other thing that we want to analyze is the robustness in terms of seasonality. So we went out this year between April and June and did a weekly acquisition, and we want to see how the point distribution differs between these acquisitions. Of course, it differs a lot due to growing leaves, but still we want to see if we are still able to capture the topmost part of the canopy also in the later acquisitions, and so far it looks quite good that we also reach the top of the canopy even under leaf-on conditions. So yeah, so far we only talked about robust data acquisition, but a big issue that we still have, I think we all have, is the robust extraction of information out of these point clouds. And here a big question or a big hope of this cost action is also the kind of discussion on that, if we find better solutions to have a more robust extraction of information. Big question here for me is are these deep learning approaches as seen by Sean Krasinski, who published an interesting paper on that recently, if these are the way to go in order to extract information out of these point clouds in a more robust manner. And yeah, with that I want to come to a conclusion. So we've seen that close-range remote sensing techniques show quite big potential to support especially Swiss National Forest Inventory in the near future. Especially mobile lasers kind of looks quite promising because of the good compromise between fast data acquisition and still quite some precision. However, the robustness of data acquisition still needs to be evaluated, and we need to find out strategies for when we are not able to acquire the data, or if the data acquisition is only incomplete. So we need to kind of find out ways to assess data quality and coverage, maybe using occlusion mapping approaches. Or also see if we can use complementary data to add more information, for example, using airborne laser scanners or 360-degree camera images, which we are already acquiring in the Swiss National Forest Inventory, and where a colleague of mine, Christina Christova, actually showed a very nice paper last week in ISPRS conference in Nice, where she extracted depth information out of these 360-degree cameras. So that can be quite an interesting addition to these data acquisition. And of course, yeah, we're still ongoing research is going on into seeing where best practices on data acquisition and automatic feature extraction. And yeah, with that, I want to thank all my colleagues at WSL who are contributing to this work, and also for you for listening. And I think if we have time, still open for question. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions from the audience? How about from the remote participants? Do they have any questions? Okay. Thanks. Is there any questions in the chat? Well, okay, there's one.
Thank you, that was really good. I really liked the comparison with the animated data that was changing. Can you give a bit more information on how you use the Minivux to collect the data? Did you put it on a backpack, and how did you experience the auto-registration when you collect the data with the instrument?
Yeah, I was not clear on that. The Minivux, we mounted it on a drone, so was the DJI M600 Pro, so and from that with the Planix, we had quite good registration, and we also used this drone point cloud to co-register the below ground acquisitions to have it in absolute coordinates, yes.
Thanks. No questions on the remote? Okay. Well, I was thinking, like, you show that the upper canopy is occluded for many parts, and I was thinking, like, how important that will be for the NFI purposes. Obviously, it affects maybe the height accuracy of the height estimates, but how about other attributes?
I'm thinking here mainly on assessing like canopy layering, which is a very important parameter where we also know that currently it is not assessed in a very accurate manner because, yeah, it's basically the expert is going into the field and assess it based on visual and on expert knowledge. And we think that if we can cover the whole range, then we can also get a more robust estimation on the canopy layering. So there's just one parameter that comes to mind here, but also canopy gaps and stuff like that. That would be really interesting to see if we can get more robust information out of that.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm sure any of the 3D point clouds would provide probably more reliable estimates than an expert. Yeah.
Depends.
Well, yeah. I guess it depends on the forest. Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
I just want to ask, when you are speaking about the process time, there was a table with the, you were referring to what steps? Just to pronounce?
Just basically to have an analysis-ready point cloud at hand. So mainly for terrestrial laser scanner was mainly the co-registration of all the scans positioned together and then also register it to a absolute coordinate system. For the mobile laser scanner is basically the SLAM processing, so that we can like really align the trajectory that we have a complete point cloud that is analysis ready. So it's really just until the point cloud is ready to, for example, detect tree position or extract information out of these point clouds.
So it's not included the extraction of biometric parameters?
I didn't understand the last part.
It not included the time needed for the extraction of the biometric parameter rather?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have 2 last questions and then we move forward and let's see if we have time after all the presentation to continue. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I really liked this seminar. I just want to, I'm curious about the algorithms. Could you just send us a link about the algorithms you used when you extracted the stem parameters from these different data sets? That's just...
You mean the...
Yeah, the algorithms for extracting the forest parameters from the point cloud data sets.
Yeah, so mainly the tree detection thing. Yeah, this was mainly done with quite simple with the tree LSR package that is freely available, and there was kind of, had to do quite a lot of filtering of the point clouds, mainly based on geometric features like verticality. And then, there's kind of, you had to filter the point clouds quite a lot. So we can talk about that, how I did that effectively.
Okay, thank you. And then Marcos, down here.
Now you make a lot of remote sensing measurements in your Swiss NFI plots. Is it foreseen that you substitute some traditional in situ measurements with the remote sensing measurements in the future?
No, we don't think that we will substitute anything. It's more kind of an addition, especially when I think of tree measurements. This will still be ongoing because they are more precise than if we extract it from the point clouds, I would say. But I think certain parameters we might be able to extract better from these remote sensing techniques, but still the traditional field assessment will still be ongoing and will not be substituted by close-range remote sensing techniques.
Okay, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.